Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Royal London webinar, The Business Protection Opportunity, Why It's Now Even More Important. I'm Tracy Miller, Marketing Consultant here at Royal London, and I'll be helping to facilitate this webinar today. But before we start the main presentation, a few housekeeping notes. If you experience any technical issues during today's webinar, you can contact the GoToWebinar support team using the contact details shown on screen now. Today's presentation will begin shortly, which will run for around 45 minutes. If you do have a question, please submit and someone will get back to you within 48 hours. At the end of today's session, you'll be sent a link with some questions. Open this link and answer those questions, and you'll be redirected to your personalised CPD certificate for this session. Please note, we won't be sending out the CPD certificate. With me today is Gregor Sked, Intermediary Development and Technical Manager for Protection. Gregor's exposure to financial services began back in 2011, and he's been working with us here at Royal London since 2018, where he's heavily involved in developing advisor-facing content. Alongside Gregor this morning is David Dawson, our Corporate and Estate Planning Protection Specialist. David has always had an in-depth knowledge of corporate protection, but this area has been his specialism for the last 5 years. I'll now hand over to Gregor, who's going to begin today's session.
Thank you so much, Tracy. And hi, everyone. And again, thank you for joining us today for the next installment of our series of webinars where we've been exploring the world of business protection. And as Tracy said, my name is Gregor Sked, the Protection Development and Technical Manager here at Royal London. And today I'm delighted to be joined by David Dawson, who's one of Royal London's resident experts on business protection. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from David a little bit later on. But today's session is really all about focusing on the business protection opportunity, and ultimately why talking to your clients about business protection is now more important than ever. Now, our webinar today is CPD-able, and to keep us nice and structured, we've got some learning objectives, which are as follows, and it's really about understanding the impact that COVID-19 has had and is having on small businesses, and also what protection solutions are available to help mitigate the risks that these businesses face. We'll also help you start identifying more business protection opportunities with your existing clients, how a conversation about risk can trigger that light bulb moment, hopefully, within your clients to help them understand the value of protection, and finally, how to build a tailored protection solution for your business protection clients. Now, to keep us nice and focused, we do have some agenda points, and these are going to help us reach those learning objectives. But just remember, as Tracy said, if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A box throughout today's sessions, and any questions that we pick up, we will aim to respond back to within 48 to 72 hours. So, starting off with looking at the actual opportunity with business protection, is there much of an opportunity to talk business protection with clients? Well, I'd say the numbers on screen really speak for themselves. Now, these are pre-pandemic figures, but looking at 2019, we were approaching just under 6 million businesses within the UK that were classed as small to medium-sized business. And the number of new company incorporations between 2019 and 2020, as you can see, was slightly balanced by a worrying increase in the number of company dissolutions. Now, the important figure that I want everyone to note here is that the figure on the bottom with 1 in 5 SMEs, where they've seemed to have insurance to protect their main asset, which is really their people. But the question is, what about those other 4 in 5 businesses who don't have protection? You know, I guess the thing is, it's important to be really positive. The world that we're living in just now is showing the value in staying positive when things go bad. And for businesses, well, a lot of businesses have been suffering, and unfortunately may well continue to suffer in the coming months. But remember, there will be opportunities amongst all of this. You know, people leave organizations, they may end up starting their own business. Other people may form new companies with family and friends, and other people may join new organizations. So within all of this, there are opportunities. But let's address that question at the start there. So why is now more important than ever to be discussing business protection with clients? Well, there's no hiding from the fact that almost every business in the UK and pretty much the world has been impacted by the global pandemic that made an appearance at the beginning of the year. Now, two of the most prominent support packages that were launched to support businesses through COVID-19 were the Bounce Back Loan Scheme and the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, or CBILS for short. Now, there's actually been over £65 billion worth of lending across these two schemes since they started. Now, many of you may have been on our recent webinar where David Jenkins went into a little bit more detail about these two packages, but also the financial impact that this is having on SME businesses. If not, I would recommend having a little look on Royal London CPD Hub to have a little look at that webinar. But the important point here is you may well have a number of clients who've applied for one of these support packages from the government over the last few months. But do you know how many of your clients who have their own business have applied for one of these loans? How easily can you find that out? And if they have applied for it, have you spoken to them about protecting one of those loans? Let's just do a quick refresher now as to what business protection actually is. And why do businesses need it? Well, simply put, business protection is really a way of safeguarding a company's financial future against unexpected costs, unexpected loss of a key person or business owner. For me, I like to break business protection down into three main chunks. Now, each chunk here represents why a business might want to consider business protection. So first up, we've got control. Now, this is really about protecting a business's ability to retain ownership and keep it in the hands of those who've built it. We've got debt. This is really about protecting a business's ability to repay corporate loans should the worst happen. We've got profit, and this is about protecting the business's financial position with a financial safety net should something happen to a key member of staff, such as a death, maybe a diagnosis of a critical illness. And that individual may well have quite a big influence on the business's revenue. Now, these are really the old style building blocks of business protection, but there's actually a fourth, which is one of the new kids on the block. And this is death in service. So this is all about protecting an employee's family should the employee pass away while in service. So we're going to look at all of these options in a bit more detail. Firstly, let's take a closer look at control, otherwise known as partnership and shareholder protection. Now, the main aim of providing this type of cover is really about ensuring that a business has the funds readily available to buy a deceased partner's share within the business, hopefully avoiding any risks that the business can't raise the finances to buy the shares back, and hopefully maybe along the way, reducing any potential disagreements that may occur. But what does this look like in practice? Well, let's introduce RL Sockets Limited. They're a small manufacturing company. They're worth about £2 million. Now, there's 4 directors to RL Sockets, each who own an equal share of £500,000, or 25%. Now, the 4 directors want to be able to maintain control of the business in the event that one of the shareholders were to pass away or to maybe become in a position where they couldn't work any longer. Now, they want to do this to protect that deceased shareholder's percentage of the business. So what happens is each shareholder takes out a £500,000 policy on an own life basis. It's written under trust for the benefit of the other business owners. Each shareholder may well pay their own premiums, and this could be accommodated by the company increasing their salaries to cover the cost of the premiums. Now, the shareholders should also here set up an agreement that details how the shares will be treated in the event of a death or a critical illness, known as a cross-option agreement. Now, this agreement will detail that the shareholders of the business do have an option to buy the shares from the estate of the deceased shareholder, and the estate also then has an option to sell these shares. So in this situation, one day, Anita, that 25% shareholder, sadly passes away. Now, her 25% share of the business is initially moved to her family. However, under that cross-option agreement, the remaining shareholders use the £500,000 benefit that's paid out to buy Anita's share of the business from the family. So at this point, they each receive an equal split of Anita's shares, and the family receive a fair value for the shares. Now, if critical illness cover was included in the plan, Anita may have to withdraw from the business. Any agreements in place, such as that cross-option agreement, would accommodate a transfer or a sale of the shares if someone were to get a critical illness. However, when we do have a cross-option agreement, it would be sensible to add a single option agreement, which means that the partner who is ill is the only person who can exercise that option. And this also means that if they can't be forced out of the business, if they feel like they're going to be returning at some point when they've recovered. However, in this situation, if the shareholders decided not to take out any shareholder protection and Anita were to pass away, their family may receive nothing from the business. And they also, at this point in time, the deceased member's family may end up becoming quite an active person within the business. Now, I'm not going into too much detail in this example about the setup or the taxation of this type of policy, because we do have a team of business protection experts, such as David, who we'll hear from really shortly. Now, they're here to help you with any technical questions or any setup questions if you've got a business protection case that you're looking at putting through with Royal London. Now, we've already spoken about bounce back loans and coronavirus business interruption schemes, which are loans that might also benefit from loan protection. Now, remember, the objective of this type of protection is really to ensure that a business can repay those debts if the worst were to happen. Now, the next element of business protection was profit, and this is where the key person cover comes in. Now, we all know that losing a key person could have a significant impact on a business. It could have a significant impact on the profits of a business. Much like machinery, people do break down. So it does make sense to have protection in place. It can even allow for a business to maybe repay bills, ongoing expenses, and maybe even recruit new replacement employees. So again, we've got RL sockets back here, just to highlight key person cover in action. Again, in this scenario, Anita, the sales director who's key to the sales of the business, has to take early retirement due to a heart attack. Again, this could have a significant impact on the business. So what they've done is they've taken out key person cover on Anita's life to protect £250,000 of profit. Again, as I said, she has to take early retirement due to a heart attack. Because there's cover in place in this situation, they are able to protect their profits, potentially even keep the bank happy too. Now, on the other hand, if the business hadn't taken out any form of protection on Anita's life, then things aren't looking so good for RL sockets. They may find that the bank may become a little bit more concerned about future sales of the business. Customers may become concerned if the business can't replace Anita, and maybe the business can't even afford to replace Anita in this situation either. And finally, we've got death in service. So with relevant life plans, they're essentially a single life standalone death in service scheme taken out by the employer on the life of the employee. Now, these type of plans offer much greater flexibility than a registered group life scheme, as the amount of cover can often be increased if needed. And they also come with a very generous tax regime. Now, back in the day, Royal London were actually the first company to introduce relevant life plans. Now, you can actually see on Royal London CPD Hub a webinar that we recently did, which explored relevant life plans in a little bit more detail. And we looked at it from both a pensions and a protection perspective. Again, just quickly looking at how relevant life plans look in action, we've got RL sockets. Once again, they take out the policy for their employees. It's written into trust, and one day one of their employees unfortunately passes away. With cover, the claim can be paid out to the family of the deceased. And as you can all guess, if things weren't as happy, if things weren't as cheery, if cover wasn't taken out, there could be some financial difficulty for the business. Anita's family may possibly be in a slightly worse financial position as well if Anita was quite a significant income earner, or maybe even the sole income earner to the family. Okay, so moving on to risk profiling, something you may do day in, day out with your clients, but how effectively are those conversations happening when we're talking about risk? So let's look at Lee. Now, he's the financial director for a small manufacturing company. He's age 49 and he's a moderate smoker. He's planning on working until he's age 70, but at the moment, there's no protection in place, and that's either business protection or personal protection. So just looking at your existing clients, how many Lees do you have within your existing client bank who may be a partner within a small business? Well, let's actually imagine you've got 100 clients, just like Lee, the exact same case study that we're looking at here. What do we think the risk and chance is that one of these clients may have to make a claim on a protection policy during their working life? So really what we're asking here, what's the probability of any option happening that a protection claim may need to happen? So first up, what's the probability of Lee dying before his retirement date? So again, if you want to use the chat box, the Q&A box to let us know what you think Lee's probability is of claiming on a life policy before he retires, let us know. So in this example, the probability that Lee is going to have to make a claim on a life policy, if you've got 100 clients just like this, you're looking at about a 14% chance of a claim being made on a life assurance policy. What about Lee's probability of being diagnosed with a critical illness before he retires? Well, in this instance, there's a 36% chance of this happening. Again, we're looking at this as 100 clients, just like Lee. And what about being off work for 2 or more months due to sickness or injury? So it's going to be a slightly higher, and in this example, it's 40%. So there's a 40% chance that a claim will have to be made before either of these individuals retire on an income protection policy. So while those figures might not be surprising, when we put them all together and look at the chance of Lee claiming on any protection policy during his working life, well, the figures jump up quite significantly. So for Lee, this is a 67% chance. If you've got 100 clients just like Lee, there's a 67% chance that any of them will have to make a claim on a protection policy during their working life. So I guess that's all very well and good, but when we're dealing with the business, when we're dealing with businesses, the chances of there being more than one person at the helm of the business are pretty high. It might be a business run by a couple, or we could just have a business like RL Sockets where there's 4 directors and we want to make sure the business protection is more relevant to them. How can we do that? Well, in this instance, let's introduce Anita, who's actually married to Lee, and maybe the two of them run a business together. When we now consider the risk that these 2 business owners may face are joint, what do we think we're going to see? And again, let's imagine we've got 100 clients like Lee and Anita. What's the risk that now we're looking at these figures combined? What's the risk of them having to make a claim on a protection policy before they retire? Well, the chance that either of the 2 of them are going to have to make a claim on a life policy before retirement is now 18%. So we're up from 14% when it was just Lee. So let's assume we've got 2 business owners. This is now an 18% chance that one of them will have to make a claim on a life policy. The chances of being diagnosed with a critical illness have, as you probably guessed by now, increased. We're now up at 46% from 36% initially when it was just one business owner. The chances of being off work for 2 or more months with a sickness or an injury-related reason, a significant jump, a significant increase, up to 71% from 40%. And I'd say, and hopefully everyone agrees on this, is that the most powerful stat is when you look at the chances that either of these business owners will have to make a claim on a protection policy. There's now an 87% chance that a claim on any type of protection policy will have to be had before either of them retire, and that's up from 67%. So what I want you to think is, we're only looking at 2 people, so this is a 2-people business, but what happens if we had a business with 3 people or 4 people? It could well be higher, probably will be higher. In this instance alone, with 2 business owners, there's nearly a 100% chance that a claim on a protection policy will occur during Lee and Anita's working life. But if we brought that back to RL Sockets with 4 directors, can you imagine what the probability would look like for them? Now, we'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think about this. And again, if you want to use the chat box or the Q&A box, do let us know if you think this is a powerful way to illustrate business protection to your clients, where there may be concerns the client might not think they need it, they might not feel it's something that will happen to them. If you think that this is something that you could take back into your business, looking at multiple business owners within this context, do let us know. So how did I build these figures? Well, these figures came from Royal London's marketing studio, and you could get these exactly as you can see them on screen for your own business. They're really powerful conversation starters and trigger points to get business clients to understand the likelihood that they may have to make a claim on a policy. Now, the risk report, which is on the left-hand side of your screen, is customizable for your clients. It only takes a few details about your clients, like their retirement age, their smoker status, to produce this little pyramid. And it's a really effective way of highlighting risk, probability, and chance for your clients. Now, the figures that we can see on screen are just of one individual. Again, do let us know if you think that having an opportunity to have multiple business owners within this is something that you would like to take back to your business. But the beauty of showing this to your client is that you can show them that it's possible to create a tailored protection solution that incorporates each element of the report that they've now seen, and hopefully they can understand the impact to them. So something Dave's going to look at a little bit later on is a menu solution, but with the Royal London menu solution, you can have up to 10 different types of cover. So you could have some critical illness cover with some income protection, with different plan owners, different start dates, and one plan fee. And it's completely flexible for your clients too. And finally, just on the right-hand side of your screen is one of the many different posters and sales aids available to help trigger business protection conversations with your clients, all of which can be white labeled with your business details too. Okay, so we've taken a little look there at the wider opportunity for taking business protection to bringing business protection to life, and why now is more important than ever to be having that conversation. But how can you find the opportunities to talk business protection on a micro level with your existing client bank? So David, I'll pass over to you to share some exciting ideas about finding opportunities to talk business protection.
Yeah, thanks, Gregor. Yeah, hello everybody. And you can see my picture there, and however, I'll get off that fairly quickly and dive straight into my first idea in terms of finding the opportunity. I'm often asked by people who are new to business protection or people who are returning to it after a break, where do I start? And however, and I always say the best place to start is with your existing clients. Why do I say that? Well, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, I don't have any business protection clients, and therefore I need to get close to professional introducers, accountants and solicitors. But if you're new to business protection and you've done a bit of study and you've watched a few webinars and whatever, you could walk into a problem very, very early on where somebody innocently asks you, about your level of experience in this market. And if you're honest and you say, well, to be honest, I'm just getting into it, starting, that could create some doubt in the minds of an accountant or a solicitor. Are they really comfortable handing over their most valuable asset, their clients, to somebody who's not experienced? So learn your craft, learn your trade with your existing clients and get your experience, and then develop the professional connections would be my recommendation. And with that in mind, what we've done is we've got this screenshot here. It's pretty busy. I'll talk you through the top line, and however, of your existing clients and how you segment them for business protection. The idea of segmentation isn't new, but doing it for a bit with a business protection slant may be something you haven't done before. So let's take that top line there. And however, we've got Ruth London, who works for RL Sockets. We've been using them as the example. They're based in Edinburgh. So these are just facts. Ruth is a client of yours. If you're a mortgage advisor, perhaps you've done a mortgage for Ruth and her husband, and you used a mix of salary and dividends as the remuneration for the mortgage. That tells you that Ruth is a shareholder within her own limited company, and that's the clue. So we know she works for a limited company, RL Sockets, and she's a shareholder. So what we do know is that every limited company in the UK has articles of association. But the no there refers to the fact that, do you, as an advisor, have a copy of RL Sockets articles of association? And most of the time, no disrespect, but most of the time, the answer to that is no. That creates a task. That's almost task number one, is get hold of these articles of association. Clearly, task number two would be to familiarize yourself with them. And if it's a document that you're not read before, but I get sent copies of articles of association frequently for me to look at and help advisors through, and that's something I can do. Now, clearly, RL Sockets is not a partnership, but you can see below Gregor's volunteered to be a partner in Skeggen Partners, and so if we were on that second line, we could ask the question, does Gregor have a partnership agreement in place? Partnerships can be established without a partnership agreement, but that is not a very good idea. because if Gregor and a couple of fellas were in partnership with each other with no partnership agreement and Gregor passed away, the partnership is immediately dissolved and the assets are spread between Gregor's estate and the remaining two partners. It's dissolved. And whatever. So it's a good idea for a partnership to have a partnership agreement, but that's also an opportunity for you. If you do ask Gregor, have you got a partnership agreement? He says no. It's an opportunity for you to develop a professional connection by putting Gregor in touch with a solicitor that you know, and that way you're making a recommendation, and hopefully the solicitor will reciprocate. Now, Gregor's touched on loans, so we're asking Ruth, do you have any corporate loans? And she may well say yes. The important point that we want to drive here is to get a copy of the loan agreement. Don't go asking Ruth questions about the loan she might have taken out a number of years ago, and whether all you need to say is, Ruth, before we have our face-to-face meeting or whatever, or a more in-depth meeting, can you get hold of and fax me over or email me over the copy of the loan agreement? And that way you'll be able to see the terms and conditions of the loan. We're looking for things like personal guarantees and joint and several liability, things like that. Does Ruth have a will? Incredibly simple, but very important. And what does the will say? Have you got a copy of it? So again, that's an opportunity to have a big conversation if Ruth turns around and says, well, I've never got round to that. So help her with her will. And however, because clearly what you don't want is the terms of a will to contradict what you might be putting in place in terms of things like cross option agreements. DLA stands for Director's Loan Account. That's money that Ruth may very well have lent, her own money that she's lent to RL Sockets. If there is a DLA in place, has it got any associated protection built into it? It's a very common thing. And again, it's a good conversation piece with accountants to actually say to them, do a lot of your corporate clients, your Ruth Londons of the world, run with DLAs? I've asked that question many times, and it comes back with a lot of shareholding directors do have DLAs. If Ruth passed away and she left everything to her husband and children, or estate in other words, that DLA becomes repayable on demand. So her husband could demand immediate repayment of that from the surviving shareholders. So without insurance, that's a pest, and however, that's something which they want to avoid. Life cover. Is Ruth paying for personal life cover herself, and would it be more tax efficient and beneficial for her to replace that with a relevant life plan? I'm sure you're all aware of that. The final one, and I'm rattling through these quickly, is about self-invested personal pensions and SASs. And what we're really looking at there is, are they property pregnant? In other words, has Ruth used her SIP to potentially buy or invest into commercial property? Quite a common thing, but that does have the constraint on liquidity. So if Ruth passed away, then her husband could insist upon the contents of the SIP being turned into cash rather than 33% or 25% of a building, and that creates issues. Not going to go into any more detail on that, but again, if anybody's interested, please let me know and we can talk through that in more detail. So, having gone through all of that, you can immediately see that segmentation exercise could present opportunities, ticks and boxes. Yes, we have those. No, we don't have that. Yes, we have that. No, we don't have that. So there's lots of tasks that you can go through, and it might surprise people just how many you can build up quickly. You imagine you've only got 5 lines of people like Ruth, but there's an awful lot of ticks that would create opportunities. And what does that then lead to? So we're now going to build a solution. We've got Ruth, and she's 45 and around £90,000 salary, with a 21-year-old son, Simon. And we're starting to, hopefully you can see that, we're starting to build a menu solution, which Greg has already touched on. So we've got some shareholder protection for £500,000. And it's got a £51.70 premium, 25-year term, great. And then we build another box. We've asked her about loans. There's a bounce back loan of 30,000. We cover that on a 5-year renewable basis, but again, within the same menu plan. And that takes the premium up to £57. There's a DLA. I've just touched on that. So the business can take out cover for that at £12.83. So we can immediately see we're building this solution quite nicely. We've got shareholder protection. We've got a couple of variables on loan protection, and we're now at the key person. Now, this is quite interesting. Ruth is so key to the business that the business should cover her for £250,000. And ideally, we'd like that to be on a death or earlier critical basis, but that's going to come at a cost, and it's too expensive. So we've actually got a slice. I'm playing with the numbers here, so just bear with me. But we've got the key person cover, death only at 150,000, and it's pretty cheap and affordable. And however, so we've built up to £86, so we're still within the realms of affordability. But we're now going to add on a slice of key person cover. It's 100,000, but it's death or earlier critical illness. Okay, so this is where we've got the critical illness here. And I've picked 100,000 for a very special reason, which I'm going to touch on in a second. And it's also at the enhanced critical illness level that Royal London provide. It's our most inclusive and top level of cover. And it comes in at £78. So you can immediately see that if we'd been doing that quote at the full 250, it would have been very expensive. And however, but that's taken the entire premium to £165.18. And I now want to just tell you why I picked that last building block, the key person 100,000 with the enhanced enhanced critical illness. Why did we do that? And this is where we bring in Simon, that little figure on the right-hand side there. Okay. Well, having seen that, we've got a total commission there and total premium of £167. Because the enhanced cover has a child conversion option, and this is very important. We just added this in a few weeks ago to the business menu plan. So Simon has just turned 21. Therefore, he's no longer covered under Ruth's plan. If Ruth had taken the plan out when he was 15, he'd been covered for those 6 years, but he's now turned 21 and he's left and gone to work in a bank or something. And however, so he's working. He has the option to take out his own cover. Okay, so you might not have heard about that before, so I'll just let that sink in because that's maybe a new thing to a lot of you. So bear in mind, so Simon can take out his own cover, but look at that red bullet point in the middle there. No medical underwriting at all. It's a done deal. Do you want it, Simon? Would you like to take out £50,000 worth of cover? The cover limit is the lower of half of the adults cover of 50,000. So the 100,000 was a tipping point. That's why I picked that. And however, so he can take out £50,000 worth of death or earlier critical with no underwriting, and is also automatically non-smoker rate. So even if he's dodging around with a pack of Marlboros in his hip pocket, doesn't matter. He's getting non-smoker rates. And that costs £10.32 on this 30-year term. Okay, so it's a bit of a cost. But what do you get out of it, Mr. Intermediary or Mrs. Intermediary? Well, you've got a brand new client, Simon. And however, which is important. If you've been in business yourself and maybe established a business over a period of time, you maybe remember in the early days what was one of the most important things, difficult things, and that was building up a client bank. The Simons of the world are the next generation of clients, and however, I think it's extremely important, and I think it's a wonderful, wonderful addition to the menu proposition. The other aspect that you've got to bear in mind is that in order for Simon to have his cover, his parent, Ruth, had to have the cover in the first place. So that could be the thing which tips the balance for Ruth taking out the cover in the first place. But you've got to remember, who paid that premium for Ruth? Well, that was the business paying the premium because it was key person. But it doesn't matter that the business was owning that cover. The child conversion option falls to the child of the person covered. So it doesn't matter if it's a company-owned plan or it's in a business trust. It doesn't matter when the Simon turns 21 or 23 if he was leaving full-time education, then that option falls to himself. Okay, so that's a really, really big, it can help you get the adults cover, but it can also help you to get that next generation of new clients, so 21 or 23-year-old aspiring lawyers and accountants and architects and God knows all what. So when Simon turns 21, the enhanced critical illness cover drops. And that's illustrated, you probably didn't notice that, but that last element drops from enhanced critical illness cover to regular critical illness cover and drops by £2 or £3. So Ruth's cover will drop to reflect the changeover in the critical illness cover. So that takes me through the first part of what I was going to talk about, finding the opportunity, and now going on to the final bit, which is how can we at Royal London help? Okay, so please indulge me with a little bit of a USP bonanza in terms of how Royal London can help. But it's important, I guess, when you're putting reasons why letters together, and you can see this list of strengths of Royal London. And the first one I just wanted to hand, I'm not going to go through all of this list, we don't have time today, but I'm just going to highlight Helping Hand for Business. Very, very important. And however, a small company could be facing an awful lot of incredibly complex decisions just now because of everything that Gregor's talked about in terms of loans, how to restructure their finances. You've probably seen in the press people who are owner managers of businesses getting really upset about not being eligible for the furlough scheme because they remunerate themselves through a mix of salary and dividends. So people now thinking, well, is it too late for me to change the way I'm remunerated? What happens if we get a second lockdown, or if Rishi extends furlough and however? So lots of conversations taking place. But if a key person is lost to a business and that business doesn't have a great big HR department, and clearly most of them won't, then having access to recruitment specialists who will be able to provide temporary replacement details within 48 hours is an absolute boon for businesses, and that's part of Helping Hand for Business, as is medical information, where the remaining directors can get some medical information about somebody's condition, and legal support. And that legal support is potentially going to play a big part going forward. And I'm absolutely certain that that we're going to get a lot of phone calls into that area about people's opportunities, how they can respond as we progress with the impact of the pandemic. Another area which I'm going to pick on is the Business Protection Planner. It's part of a Royal London website. We get a great many compliments about this. There's absolutely heaps of tools and opportunities for you to get involved there. And we also have the CPD Hub, which I think I'm going to, it's almost the last one there, the CPD Hub. And Gregor referred to that. That's where we store an awful lot of our existing presentations. And I did one. I just want to go back and I did a presentation and on unfair prejudice, and it's sitting within the CPD Hub. And that is worth a look if you're looking for another 45 minutes of CPD. But the reason I draw attention to that is that that's all about people deciding not to pay dividends to a widow of a deceased shareholder, a consequence of not having shareholder protection. And why do I dwell on something like that? Well, you've probably seen in the press that there's speculation about the Chancellor changing the taxation of dividends. It's not going to be popular, it's not going to be a vote winner, but we've also already had this pressure on people not being eligible for the furlough scheme, and maybe changing from taking dividends and going back to taking a salary. And however, so that becomes important, because if a shareholding director dies and leaves his shares to his widow and she becomes a shareholder, then she's entitled to a dividend. And that puts an awful lot of pressure on the remaining shareholding directors when they realise that. And it has been known for them to decide not to declare a dividend, thinking that that's going to save them a few quid, but it can lead them down a world of pain in terms of unfair prejudice. Won't go into any more detail, but that presentation is on our CPD Hub. Okay. So you have access to myself and my colleague Dave Jenkins that we referred to earlier, who's down south. So if you do have any questions, you want to get into this area and you just want to bounce some ideas off me, give me a call, and I'm delighted to help. What next? Next steps. Hopefully I've inspired you to think about getting into business protection. If it was me, I'd go through the segmentation exercise, identify half a dozen clients, and then start asking them those questions and filling in, some kind of rudimentary segmentation sheet, and then taking it from there. Give me a call at that point. Prioritize. Work with your clients. You've maybe presented half a dozen solutions, shareholder, loan in its many guises, key persons, relevant life. And however, it's like saying to somebody when you've done that, this is how you can fully comprehensively insure your business. But how do you insure your car? Well, everybody insures their car fully comp, but you don't have to be street legal, but everybody just does it. So fully comprehensive insurance for your business could involve all of those: shareholder, loan, key man, relevant life. But it might be too much of a budget strain. So we prioritize what's the most important thing to do first. We decide to do, loan protection or key person first, fine. But what we've done is we've set up the dripping roast of annual reviews. Go back to your clients year after year, and all of a sudden you'll build a solution. It might take you 4, 5, 6 years, but we'll get there in the end. And speak to us. We're here to help. So I'm going to just basically re-show you the learning outcomes. Hopefully you'll agree that we've covered off onto all these 4 bullet points. There's no doubt COVID is a big impact on businesses and will continue to be there. I think we're now into the next generation of furlough, where the businesses are having to pay 10% of salaries, and it's going to go to 20% in October and then finish. And however, so yeah, talking to businesses, there's no doubt that all businesses are facing strains. And however, even if you do ask a business, have you got a bounce back loan or a C-build, and they say no, ask them the question, well, okay, but has your business been affected in the last 6 months, 5 months? And if they say, well, yeah, it has really badly affected, and you say, but you didn't take out a loan, so how have you been funding your business? Well, we've been funding it through retained profit. That's like rainy day money. That's like if you've got personal clients who've got a few £1,000 saved in the bank. That's their emergency slush fund. If businesses have been very reluctant to take a loan, but they've burned through their retained profit, then that's their safety net gone. So if they lost a key person right now, they don't have that buffer to be able to survive. So even though we've not got a loan to cover, doesn't matter. The key person loss of profits insurance becomes really important. And that risk report, that the potential risks, fantastic. And but please, just as Gregor said, that triangle, the functionality at the moment only exists on a single life basis. Our actuaries had to give us to calculate the joint life numbers. But if you feel that going from that jump from 1 to 2 on that functionality would be a good thing, let us know. If we get lots of positive feedback, we'll feed it into the marketing mix and see whether or not we can get it added to the functionality. It wouldn't happen overnight, but please let us know. And then that final point there, I'm sure you building blocks, building a solution, and using the menu plan. We're here to help. And with that in mind, I'll hand back to Tracy.
That's great. Thank you to both of our presenters. If you have the time, we'd really appreciate your feedback and your rating on today's session. I'd like to remind you that the web address to access those CPD questions to receive your CPD certificate is on screen now. Now, as I mentioned at the start, an email with a link to this site will also be sent out to you shortly. We're currently working on our next webinar, which will take place in October with a focus on claims. So please make sure you look out for further details on this through the usual channels. So that just leaves me to say thank you once again to our presenters, to you for joining us this morning. Stay safe and goodbye.